Welcome, fellow bookworms, to Tibra's Den. My name is Whitney, and today we are doing my August wrap up. I'm pretty sure this is all the books that I'll read for the month. There's like 2 days left. I have one book that I'm just gonna kind of be slowly reading. So I'll kind of work on that the last 2 days of the month. But other than that, I think I'm done with reading for the month. And I had a really good month. It wasn't sure if it was gonna go the way it did, but it ended up turning out really, really good. There were a few books that I ended up not reading that I had originally planned to, and then there were several books that I did add on. But overall, it was definitely a solid reading month. So I guess let's go ahead and jump into it. The beginning of the month was a little bit rough for me. I don't know if you guys saw that video, but I ended up having a bad tooth. So I didn't do videos for a while, and reading was a little bit slow for the first couple weeks of the month, but I think I definitely made up for that with the second half, and the first half of the month wasn't too bad either. So I'm just going to quickly run through those books because I did kind of do a mid-month wrap up for those, and then I'll jump into the books that I did not get to talk about in the mid-month wrap up and talked about them a little bit more. So let's go ahead and start. The first three books I read, I had binge watched the show on Amazon Prime, The Summer I Turned Pretty, and just absolutely loved it. So I ended up ordering the box set of the trilogy, and so I read those right off the bat. And so we have The Summer I Turned Pretty, It's Not Summer Without You, and We'll Always Have Summer. Read all three of these, definitely enjoyed them. Not gonna, like I said, talk too much about those because I already did that. But overall, they were solid reads. They were perfect, light, perfect summer vibes for August. So next were other ones that were just perfect wise healing and everything. And this is the Southern Witch trilogy by Kimberly Frost. It's not a trilogy, it's a series, sorry. But I read the first three books in the series. And so first up was Would Bewitched, then we had Barely Bewitched, and then Halfway Hex. And again, they're kind of read cozy mystery but with supernatural vibes, and they were so enjoyable. I'm definitely going to be continuing to read this series as I come across the books and such. So that was that one. Then I read Never Cry Wolf by Farley Mowat, and I love this one. I am going to say that. If you kind of like conservationist, naturalist vibes, definitely check out this author. And even if you don't and you're kind of interested in maybe diving in, this is a perfect one because one, it wasn't that dense and it's not that long, but two, the author has a really good sense of humor. And so this is definitely a good one to try if you're not sure about reading those kind of books. This is perfect. So, really, really enjoyed this one. And then I read one of the new books I had gotten, which is A Face to Die For by Irish Johansen. This is part of her Eve Duncan series. This one wasn't my favorite that I've ever read by her, but was still pretty enjoyable. It has like a Helen of Troy aspect, and Eve is a forensic sculptor, so that always plays in as well. But overall, solid read. I did still really enjoy it, even though I don't think it's quite as good as some of her other works. So those are the books I had talked about previously in my mid-month wrap up. At that time, I was still working on this next one, which is Nightwork by Nora Roberts. I hadn't quite finished it. Obviously finished it now. This one I loved so much. Obviously, as I mentioned many, many times, Nora Roberts is my favorite author, but this one is definitely a top one for me. You have Harry, who is kind of a great character morally. He is a thief, and he starts stealing when he's young because his mom has cancer and they're struggling to pay the bills and such. So it definitely has that trigger warning for cancer. I mean, the first pages I was bawling. So, and then, that's a big part of why he became a thief and such. And then from there, it just follows him throughout his life. And obviously she does write romance, and so there's a romantic interest. But it's kind of a romantic suspense book, and I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was good, and any questions I had as far as like logic or something, she did answer towards the end. So I was like, okay, that makes more sense. But I really, really enjoyed the characters. I thought Harry was really enjoyable. And I enjoy that kind of morally gray aspect. Especially you kind of understand why he got into the business. And he does, even though he is a thief, he does have morals and such. And it was just, I really enjoyed this one. This is definitely a top one for me as far as her books go, for sure, especially her romantic suspense books. So that was the next one I read. Then we got into my ABC author books. The first one I read is Grave Witch by Kalayna Price. I did do a video for these, so definitely check that out if you're interested. I think it was my latest video. I'll leave it linked down below, but this one is kind of the Dresden Files meets, which is by Jim Butcher, meets the Anita Blake series by Laurel K. Hamilton. And honestly, I enjoyed this one better. It wasn't quite as intense as Laurel K. Hamilton. I've only read one of those books, but it was kind of intense. This one doesn't have that intensity. It's a really easy read, and the main character, is a lot more enjoyable than Harry is in the Dresden Files. So if you're one that you're not a fan of Harry Dresden as a character, but you like kind of that PI supernatural aspect, this is definitely one to try because she is a detective. And then she's a grave witch, so she raises shades from the dead. Well, not from the dead, they're still dead. She raises shades so you can talk to them and such. But I really, really enjoyed this. It has a character named Death, um, which I enjoyed. We don't get a whole lot of him. I mean, I wanted more, but this is the first in the series, so hopefully going forward we'll get more of him. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. Definitely going to be keeping an eye out for more in this series for sure. So that is that one. And then my other ABC author book that I was reading this month was supposed to be for my Q author, and that was Sally Quinn, Regrets Only. This was the only Q author I could find at the thrift store, so I picked it up hoping, that I would enjoy it, even though reading the synopsis, it was very obviously political. I did not enjoy this. I DNF'd it after 15 pages of. It was just rough. 15 pages of just, I can't do this. I had to force myself through those 15 pages. So I DNF'd this. This will definitely be going back to the thrift store, probably where I got it from. Because yeah, this is just not for me. First 15 pages, we're talking about a dinner party that this person was throwing and how she rated, the guests based on how powerful they were and such. I don't know. It just wasn't for me. I didn't enjoy the writing particularly well enough in those 15 pages to try to push through and see if there was anything else that I might enjoy later on. So because of that, I ended up going to the little local bookstore, and I decided if I DNF a book that I did pick out specifically for my ABC Author Challenge, I'm going to read 2 books in its place. I kind of did that last month with 1984 by George Orwell. I ended up reading 2 books in its place, not intentionally. One was one of my Dear America books, and I just didn't know that it fit quite right, and so I ended up putting another one in that slot. So anyway, I went and got a book. I found 2. I don't know where my other one is. It's right here. I'll show it to you. I did find 2 Q authors at the bookstore, but one I knew wasn't what I wanted to read for this challenge, and that is called Spillover by David Quammen. Um, so this is a nonfiction, and it's about zoonotic diseases and how it's spillover, animal infections, and the next human pandemic. Like that explains it all. I have started, but only a few pages, and so far I like the writing style, but it's obviously kind of a denser book. So this is one I'm just going to kind of be reading slowly over time, so I didn't want to include it for my ABC Author Challenge. But I did find Ellery Queen, the Siamese Twin Mystery, and I was a little confused because the main character is Ellery Queen and his uh, father, who's an inspector. And I was confused because it says by Ellery Queen. I was looking on Goodreads, I think. I was looking somewhere anyway. And this is actually a pen name created by two cousins. So they created this pen name, and then that is also their main character. So this is just one of those murder mysteries, kind of like an Agatha Christie style. This cover is horrible. It does not fit what's in the book. The book kind of has gothic vibes a little bit. But basically, they end up at kind of this doctor's house. They end up trapped because there's a fire, which the logic behind the fire didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but it was a major player in the book. And they end up at this doctor's house while he ends up getting murdered. And so they're trapped there and they start investigating because nobody can get up to them to investigate the murder. And then another murder happens as well. So yeah, this one wasn't bad. It really just wasn't quite my cup of tea. Again, I talked about these in my ABC author video. The other one I read, I don't have it because I already returned it to the library. I ended up finally going to my library after I think we've lived here 4 years now. It takes me a long time to kind of settle it. It's the same thing in the last place I lived. Like, it took me a long time before I actually went to the library. It just, I have to build up to that. I don't know if it's, my anxiety or because I'm autistic, whatever. I don't like going new places. And so I was just in a good place and I was kind of in the mood to check out the library finally. Of course, the one day it's really, really rainy, right? So anyway, I go to the library and I got picked up Dog on It by Spencer Quinn. I love this book. So I'm not a big fan of mystery, like cozy mysteries or murder mysteries or anything like that. But this one's more of a cozy mystery, and I absolutely loved it because it's all told from the dog's viewpoint. So it's Chet and Bernie, and Chet's the dog, and it's all told from his viewpoint. So the conversations the people are having, to give you more information, is what he's hearing. And it was just so funny. And this is the first one in the series, and there's a kidnapping. And so they're hired to try to find this girl. Well, she ends up showing back up before disappearing again. And so nobody really believes it's actually a kidnapping. They just think she's a runaway teen. But it was really, really enjoyable. He nailed like what you would think it would be like in a dog's brain completely. And it was just a really fun time. I'm definitely going to be checking out more from the series. I was reading some of the reviews and there was a person that said that they don't like cozy mysteries and such either, but they really, really enjoyed this book. Like, they gave it a chance because somebody told them, that they, even though they don't like this, that they would probably enjoy this one, and so they gave it a chance and they loved it too. So if you're not a big kind of cozy mystery person, definitely check this out, especially if you do like dogs, because like it's fun and it's funny, even though it's also sad and kind of has that mystery aspect to it as well. Like, really, really good. I also got Hide by Kiersten White at the library as well. This is one I have seen, obviously all over Book Talk. It was kind of really hyped up, and then the reviews weren't so great on it. Well, it still is one that I was really, really interested in reading. I was like, even though the reviews aren't great, there's something about the premise that I'm interested in reading. So I found it at the library. I'm going to be trying to get a physical copy for my personal collection because I actually really, really enjoyed Hyde. I can see why people did it. One is being um, marketed as an adult novel, and it really does read YA, even though the characters are a little bit older, like in their 20s and such. It really reads YA. And so I think that's probably the biggest problem is, she's obviously trying to get away from YA and delve into the adult novel world, but she's used to writing YA, and so that's how it reads. And I can see, other reasons why people don't like it. They jumps around. There's 14 contestants, and it jumps around between viewpoints, um, between all the contestants, and then some of like the outside people. So basically, if you haven't heard of Hyde, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. You have 14 contestants, and they are involved in this competition in this abandoned or rundown amusement park, and they have to hide, um, and try not to get out essentially, and then they're supposedly gonna win $50,000. But it's a lot sinister than that, and there's actually a lot um going happening underneath the surface that they don't know about. So but I really enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed all the different viewpoints. For me, I like really watching like horror games. I don't play too much. The only one I play is Dead by Daylight. I love that game, but I like watching them, like especially the ones where they have to kind of make a choice and that affects the game. So like recently, The Quarry came out, and I've been watching different people play that. And then Until Dawn, that's another one I really watched people play. And that's kind of how this book read to me. You have all these different characters, and you're kind of going between their viewpoints to figure out what's happening and how the story is unfolding. And it also felt like, I'm gonna say this because if you are a Supernatural fan, you'll know, but if you're not, it's not necessarily a spoiler. But I think it was season one. I want to say episode 11. I can't remember for certain. I'll put it down here. But there was that episode where Dean and Sam kind of separate, and I can't remember which one it was. I think it was Sam. And he goes to this town, and they have this apple orchard, and this creepy scarecrow. And there's something going on in the town that is affecting people that kind of come into it. And that's kind of what it reminded me of, because you have this town that plays a part into what's going on, why they're having the competition and such. But I can see why people aren't a big fan of it, but I absolutely loved it. The only thing I will say on Hyde is it is broken up by days, which I did not enjoy that. I wish it had been more true chapters, because like in the beginning the days are kind of moving quickly, but then there's one chapter towards the end that's like 100 pages, and it's like 200 and something pages. So 100 page on one day, and it was kind of hard to find a stopping point and such. So that's the only thing I didn't enjoy. But it has like journal reading, like entries that you read as well, which kind of takes you back to the beginning and why again this competition is happening. So if you are kind of interested in Hyde, don't let the negative reviews turn you off. Don't go into it expecting like this amazing horror book or anything like that. I think if you kind of go into it with realistic expectations, you can get a lot of enjoyment out of it. And if you like the games like The Quarry or Until Dawn and such, I think you would really enjoy this book. And I was watching somebody else's review on it. I can't remember again. I'll find it and I'll leave it linked down below. But I was watching their review on it, and they were kind of talking, and they mentioned that it would make a really good TV show. And I completely agree. Either a TV show or a movie. It definitely reads like one of those kind of low budget horror movies where you just have this group of friends, or even, kind of a game like I like to watch. I think it could do well in any of those scenarios, even though the writing itself was a little weak. So that was the next one I read. And like I said, those are both already back at the library. Next up, I had my Throwback Thursday books. So again, there's already a video on these, so I won't talk too much on them. So first up, I read Big Mutt by John Reese. And then I also read Kavik the Wolf Dog by Walt Morey. This one doesn't have a cover, but these two are very similar in theme. In this one, you have this kind of spoiled New York City mutt who gets abandoned in North Dakota Badlands. And so he's kind of having to fight for his survival, and he's killing sheep to survive. Well, that's, the towns, that's how they earn money and a living and such. So they're kind of hunting him. And then there's this 15-year-old boy that's trying to save him. And then in Kavik the Wolf Dog, you also have a 15-year-old boy. And so in this one, he starts off as a sled dog and he's trained. And then he wins the North American. So this rich guy takes notice of him and wants him. And so on the way, when he's being transported, the plane crash. And so you have another 15-year-old boy, Andy, I believe, and he ends up saving this dog. Well, it's owned. The guy is the big guy in this town. And so they have to give the dog back. His father's like, we have to give him back. Well, the dog ends up escaping and trying to return to Andy, and so he having to brave the wilds and such. So both of these, you kind of have the dogs, in the wild and whatnot. But both of them I really, really enjoyed. And then I also read The Call of the Wild. This is a picture classic. This, of course, is by Jack London. I didn't realize at the time because I got this on Pango and I was just kind of trying to fill an order. It's a graphic novel version of The Call of the Wild. So, not my favorite, but I've never actually read The Call of the Wild. Obviously, I was familiar with the story, and now I'm more familiar with it just because of this, because it really, kind of whittles it down and just gives you a brief synopsis of what goes on in the whole book. So I'm definitely gonna keep my eye out and try to pick up an actual copy, because I did not like this graphic novel type version. But yeah, I included that. I got it. It arrived, and I thought, I'm reading these other ones anyway. I might as well read this one as well. So next, I kind of had an issue getting one of my Boxcar Children books. So I did do a order from eBay, and then I had a free credit from Thrift Books, so I ended up doing an order there as well. And these two books that came, I decided I just wanted to read. So first is Clifford's First Valentine's Day, and this is by Norman Bridwell. And I had some of these Clifford books when I was growing up. So this is obviously very short, very easy to read. But I had some. The two that stand out to me is I had this Halloween one and this Easter one. I know I had those two. And I had some of the others, but I can't quite remember which ones. But I remember reading those two over and over again. So yeah, I just read this. Very cute. It's his first Valentine's Day, so he's a little tiny baby puppy. And it's adorable. So I read that as well. And then this has been on my bucket list to get, and I don't know why I haven't gotten it before now, because I love Winnie the Pooh. Like, I still watch the movies. The Mini Adventures of Winnie the Pooh is my favorite. That's the one I had as a child, and I will watch it over and over again, and I still watch it frequently, especially if I'm having a bad insomnia night. I can put on Winnie the Pooh and go right to sleep. Like, I love Winnie the Pooh. So anyway, I finally got the book. This is the full color gift edition. And so I finally got it and I went ahead and read it. And this is by A.A. I think you can pronounce his last name Milne. And then it's illustrated by Ernest H. Shepard. So I went ahead and got this, and then I was so happy with it. I did actually end up ordering the other three, also in full color uh, gift editions. Figure it's my birthday, why not? Coming up in the middle of September. So they're on their way. They should actually be here tomorrow, so I'm probably going to try to sneak them in on my September TBR. But yeah, I mean, you should be familiar with Winnie the Pooh. Just adorable. The only thing I will say is obviously I'm familiar with the movies, and the songs are what some of my favorite things about the movie, especially the Little Black Raincloud song. The songs are not the same in the book. They did change those. I definitely prefer the songs in the movie than the songs in the book. And when he's doing his little stretches up, down, love that song as well, and it's not the same in here. So, but super cute. They're illustrated, colored illustrations in this one. So, it's still the same illustrations, but they had somebody color them in and such. So really, really cute, and I can't wait to get the other three and read them as well. Next up, I kind of struggled with this one a little bit. And that is A Thief of Time by Tony Hillerman. So this is one of his Leap Horn and Chi novels, which are Native American detectives. Chi is part of the Navajo Tribal Police. I think Leap Horn was too. But in this one, uh, Lieutenant Leaphorn just lost his wife, so it was a little bit more depressing than the other books. So I've read one by Anne Hillerman, which is his daughter who kind of took over the series, and then The Sinister Pig by him, which is later on in the series. So this one, I think it was just kind of the time when it was, especially because I'm reading them kind of willy nilly. I think that was part of it. But once I got more into it and it was more about the case, I really did enjoy it. So this one, there are thieves of time. They go and they like archaeologists, but they're thieves of time go to archaeological sites and steal stuff. Like in this case, they're stealing pots that the Anasazi have created. And so that's kind of the case for this. And it all ties together. Like you have Lieutenant Leaphorn kind of working on a missing woman, and then you have Chi working on these thefts, and so they ends up kind of combining, and it's actually one big kind of case. So definitely a southwestern, that's where it takes place in the southwest, which is where I'm from, which is also why I enjoy these because I'm familiar with the landscapes. So in this particular one, it's more the Four Corners area. So up, I'm southern New Mexico, so this is up, like I said, around the Four Corners area, so northern New Mexico. But yeah, just a good time. This is an author. Obviously, I'm going to be picking up more books and reading, but I'm just kind of as I come across them. I'm not actively searching them out. So not a bad read overall. Then let's see here. I was supposed to read the two more Jim Butcher books. The next two in the Dresden Files, which is Cold Days and Skin Game. And I did start Cold Days, and these were like the last ones I picked up. And I picked up Cold Days, and I was reading it. It wasn't bad by any means. I just wasn't feeling it. Like, I didn't want to read it. The last one I did not enjoy at all, and I've really been pushing myself reading them each month. So I just decided, you know what? I'm not going to read these. I still can finish these this year, even if I don't read them for August or September, because since September is my birthday month, I'm not reading any of these. I'm taking a break. So I decided to go ahead and take a break in August as well. So these will wait until October, and then I'll jump back in with these two. But I'm just not feeling it right now. I kind of got a little burnt out, especially not enjoying the last one. And then I also was supposed to read West of Eden and Winter in Eden for my 25 Days of Bookmas. I actually started West of Eden, read like 3 chapters, really was enjoying it, but it's a very big brain. So these are another one I decided I'm going to hold off on and read at a different date. This is a trilogy, so there's one more called Return to Eden, but I was enjoying it. It's just I'm going to hold off on these. Then I was added this one on because I had time. I finished up all my other reads, decided I wasn't going to read the Dresden Files, and so it's Promise Me Tomorrow by Nora Roberts, which this is the one that was kind of the rare one that people were pricing at over $100 to get. Found a seller on Pango who, you know, worked with me, got the price down, and I ordered it, but it's still kind of an expensive book, right? So my husband's asked me when I'm going to read it. So since I had time, I ended up adding this on. And I don't know why, I can see why she wouldn't think it's a good example of her writing. But overall, like, I actually enjoyed it. It was more of a 3-star for me than like a 4 or 5 star, like some of her other works, like Nightwork was a 5 star. I have another one I'm going to talk about, which was a 4 star. This was more of a 3 star. The relationship was a little toxic. There was some things that logically didn't make sense, but overall, it's still, I think, a good example of her writing. Um, I've read books by her that I would consider way worse than this one. So this one you have Sarah, and she's an architect, and so she gets hired at this firm, and it's kind of a big firm, and so it can give her a lot of opportunities. And the what is it? Like the second in command guy, there's a lot of attraction between them, and he's an engineer, but he has some issues. And that's one of the things, like, you get his backstory, but it doesn't really explain why he is the way he is, because he doesn't want to be in love. Like, he doesn't want those connections or anything like that. And it never really explains that at all. So that's one of the logics. And then there's kind of this, it is a little bit of romantic suspense as well, and so there's kind of the suspense aspect. And there's one thing that doesn't explain, it's between her and this Frenchman, and it doesn't really explain his motives fully, involving her. So that again dropped the logic down a little bit for me, but otherwise I really enjoyed it overall. Like, it was definitely a solid read. Like, um, I will say the synopsis doesn't do it justice, because the synopsis made it like her and this engineer, that's kind of her boss, have this affair, and then um they kind of have this falling out, and she rushes off to Paris and into the arms of this Frenchman, and that is not the case. They have this attraction, but it doesn't really develop into anything. A few kisses, and she goes to Paris for a job, not rushing there to escape or anything like that. So and then kind of also what happens later on, like, it's a bit whirlwind, and doesn't really make sense logically either. So, especially given his um feelings on love and such, it doesn't really make sense. But overall, it still was enjoyable. Like, I don't think it's bad enough that it should never be republished, which is why it's so hard to get a hold of, because she doesn't like it and she's not going to republish it again. But like I said, I've read other books that I think are way worse than this one. Like, I actually enjoyed kind of the storyline of the architect and such. It was more like the logic aspects, and kind of not fully developing things that were the problem. Otherwise, I thought it was pretty solid, and I did enjoy this. So, then two more books. I know this video is getting a little longer. So, I'm reading this one with my husband, The Awakening, which is book one in the Dragonheart Legacy, which is a trilogy. This is also by Nora Roberts. So, the third one comes out in November, but more towards the end of November. So, I wanted to start reading these with my husband. We're reading them aloud. And so I didn't expect to fly through this one like we did, because the last trilogy we read of hers, it took like months, to get through one book. So we ended up flying through this in 2 weeks, because I couldn't read it the first half of the month because I couldn't read aloud. And yeah, really, really enjoyed this one. So this one you have Breen. This ended up being 4 stars for me. But you have Breen, and she's kind of, her mother kind of suppresses her. Like, her mother is not a likable character at all. But she just, she's always kind of, you know, bringing Breen down, forcing her into a career she doesn't like, um, trying to get her to minimize her looks and things like that. Well, Breen's like penny pinching and such, trying to pay off student loans, and in this career she doesn't like, taking on extra work so she can afford bills and such. And she learns that her father has been sending her money for years, ever since he left when she was a child, and she has close to $4 million now. So after learning that, she ends up going on this trip to Ireland to try to connect with her heritage and maybe try to find her father. And then that ends up leading to her following this dog into the woods, and ending up in Tala, which is this kind of other realm where there's fae. So there's fairies and mermaids and such, elves. And then she's learning about her history, and her powers that she has. So this was really good. It was a bit slow, like compared to like her other fantasy, and such, how action packed they are with like battles and such. This one was slow. Like the first, it's broken up into 3 parts. Um, and the first part is just her, struggling, and at the end of the first part is when she finds out about the money, and then she's in Ireland, and it's kind of more laid back and such. So even though it was slow, and like in the first part, there's a lot of anxiety that she has and whatnot, which you're dealing with that along with her. So even though it was a little slower, I still really, really enjoyed this. And this one, it's easy to kind of get into a rut. Like authors tend to have like a certain style they write in, and with her, especially her fantasy trilogies and such, generally you have a group of 6, and each book is focusing on a different couple. Where in this one, it doesn't feel like that. I think Breen and Keegan, who is the romantic interest, they're going to be the main focus, and then the others are side characters, which is not typically how she does it. So I do kind of like that mix up. It does feel a little bit fresher from some of her other stuff. Um, and in this one, there's also a very slow burn between her and Keegan. And it's not really an enemies to romance, but there is kind of that slight aspect there because they're not very fond of each other in the beginning. But yeah, I'm really excited to jump into the next one and see where it goes. And I can't wait for the third one to come out in November. So, really did enjoy this one. And then the last one was kind of a spur of the moment, thing. Like I said, it's I'm was done reading, and I've had a couple days left over in the month. And this is one I've been seeing pop up, and I have heard nothing but good things about. And if you've been around, I do not like ebooks or audiobooks. I am a physical book reader. Like there's a sensory thing for me where I like the aspect of physically holding a book. I like feeling it, I like the smell of it, and it helps ground me while I'm reading the story. I have done well with audiobooks when they're nonfiction, and this book I'm going to be talking about is nonfiction, and that is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy, who was on the Nickelodeon show iCarly and then the spin-off Sam and Cat. I never watched iCarly. I did not watch Sam and Cat back when it first aired. I recently watched it, but it really wasn't because of iCarly or anything that. It was because I watched Victorious, and then I ended up watching Sam and Cat. But it's kind of her memoir, and it lots of trigger warnings. Definitely look up the trigger warnings before you go into it, but it is so good. And the audiobook is narrated by her, which really, really adds to it because it's like she's telling you her story, because she is. So it was so good. It's kind of, about the trauma she dealt with as a child star, and abuse from her mom as well. Even though she didn't really recognize that, until later on when she was in therapy and such. And like there's moments when she's narrating that you can hear her getting choked up. Like I understand why people are like, read this book. Like even if you weren't, you know, in the era of watching iCarly and such, like it's definitely still worth the read, 100%. But trigger warnings: it has eating disorders, it has abuse, addiction, and things like that. So definitely a lot of trigger warnings in there, but it is so, so good. And like I said, the way she narrates it, like I'm not a big audiobook fan, and I'm so glad I went with the audiobook version of this as well. So that was the last book. I actually just finished it. I ended up going to the grocery store, and so I was listening to it while I was in the grocery store and then putting groceries away and such. And yeah, 100%. If you can handle the trigger warnings because it is upsetting, 100% recommend that one as well. So I think that is it for all the books. I know this video got longer. Nidra says hi. She was having a nice little nap. She's is my service dog, so she goes to the store with me. She was having a nice little nap. Aw. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and leave you here since this video is really long. Um, if you made it this far, leave the skull and crossbones emoji for Jeanette McCurdy's book, I'm Glad My Mom Died. And yeah, I'll go ahead and leave you guys here. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.